4 exceedingly talented, experienced, and generous people with us this evening. We're going to introduce them one at a time. I guess I'm going to go around the gallery here, if I may. Nolan Markey, thank you for joining us. Nolan is, I think, a 5-year graduate of the CSUN media program and has been exceptionally busy and in demand. In the middle of our gallery is the esteemed Ashley Irwin, who is the president of the Society of Composers and Lyricists, the group that I have belonged to for 20 years and have been on the board of, and just admire him tremendously. Tremendous amount of experience, generosity. He's even got a sense of humor after all these years. So welcome, Ashley. Down on the bottom, we have our last 2 guests, also CSUN film composition, media composition graduates, Simon J. and Luke Shresha, incredibly talented and very hip guys. You can see the nightclub vibe that they have going in their studio, unlike my orchids and scores. So without further ado, we'd like to start talking to our guests. We have some questions for them, and I will also introduce, I have forgotten, Professor Clinton Rusich, who is our head of media composition, and our 2 collaborators in the music industry programs here, Professor Andrew Surmani, who's the head of music industry administration, and Professor Jeff Izzo, who is the head of music industry studies. Industry administration is the master's level, industry studies is the bachelor's level. So I would like to start with our first question. Nolan, can I begin with you? What was your first paid commercial writing gig and how did you get the job?
So I honest to God couldn't remember. So I actually went back and looked at my taxes from like 10 years ago. And it was the first thing I ever got paid for to write was a animated student film at SVA, to School of Visual Arts in New York, and I got paid, I think, $1,200 to do that. I don't remember writing it, but I must have gotten paid for it. I can't find the music anywhere, but that was the first thing that I got paid for, was a little student film. And then I got linked up with that because weirdest of weird connections. When I was in high school, I did marching band, and I was the drum major, so I would, wave my hands around a lot. And they send you to a camp where you learn how to conduct. And I made a bunch of friends there. And one of the guys that I was there with had a friend, years later, who was going to SVA as an animation major, and then he knew that I had gone to school for composition, so he recommended me to her. We hit it off, and then she hired me, and that's how that happened. So it was through kind of a weird connection, but that's how a lot of these things happen.
I think that's pretty typical of our industry. Ashley, your first paid commercial writing gig, did you have to go back and look at your taxes for that one?
No. My first paid commercial gig was actually, well, for a long time, was as an arranger before I became a composer. And I guess I tried to think about this, but I think my first commercial gig would have been when I was about 14. I guess I started writing arrangements. I had a band in high school that was kind of like a jazz rock band, and we used to go in talent quests at clubs, and we generally won. And so we'd win, it was quite a large band because it had a brass section and all that. But I don't know, maybe nine piece, something like that. And I wrote I was one arranger, and the other arranger was the trombone player. and I started I started writing for acts that we beat. People would say, "So, who wrote those arrangements?" And I said, "Well, I did." "Oh, well, will you write a show for me? Will you write a chart for me? Will you, whatever?" And I go, "Yeah, okay." So I started writing charts for the acts that we beat in the Talent Quest, and that started to pay for when I wanted to buy gear, an electric piano and a synthesizer and things. When they came out, I guess that was my first writing gig.
Excellent. Excellent. Paying all the sidemen and everything. That's great. Lucas and Luke. Excuse me. I have too many Lukes. I only have one Simon though, so that won't confuse me. Luke Shresha, tell me about your first gig, or is it with Simon, or how did you guys do that?
I think my first gig was in college, probably sophomore year. I was writing songs or instrumentals actually for this cheer company that did like custom cheer mixes. So they, I literally just was doing 4 instrumentals a week for them for months, and actually was a really cool gig because I got paid and I got to do 4 instrumentals a week. So I was really putting in the reps. So I think that was my first thing, I would say.
I think I remember helping you on a couple of those. Did I do that?
I don't know. It's
maybe not.
Memory is foggy, and in that time,
we're all in that boat. Yeah. Son, how about you? Your first paid gig?
It was actually through you and Mark Waters. It was the score concert with the Television Academy. We had like Bear McCreary, Sean Callery, Ramin Javadi, like a bunch of really, really, really awesome composers, and I was the backup orchestrator / arranger / taping parts with Darren and Lynn, and doing a bunch of really, really random stuff, which was of course incredible. But that really started a really long-term relationship with the Television Academy, which we still work with today. We've worked on the Emmys every year since 2014. Then actually with Ashley as well, arranged when Ricky Minor was the MD for the show, because we work for Ricky Minor as well. But that really started a lot for us, and it was a really, honestly perfect first gig.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm going to turn it over to our head media person now, who is putting me to shame here running this gig. Go with question number 2, Clinton.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. And I'm just following your lead, as it were. So just to keep things different and break things up, we agreed to alternate questions. So I have question number 2. I will, I guess, start with Nolan. Who or what has influenced your writing the most, and why?
It honestly, it varies day by day. It depends on what I'm working on. If I'm doing an episode of Clone Wars or something, it's obviously going to be John Williams. Or if I'm working on something kind of weird and synthy, it's going to be Clint Mansell. But if I had to pick one, just on a running through line throughout my career, I'd probably say Jerry Goldsmith, for a few reasons. One, because I just think he's the best, but he's also, I think, he's the epitome of being a chameleon as a composer. If you look at his filmography and what he's written, and just the insane variety in terms of style, he could do everything, and he could do it all really, really well. So I'd say definitely Jerry Goldsmith is the biggest influence, if not musically, then in terms of a career. Just in terms of being able to evolve and do anything. And if I see something that I want to do, be able to acquire or develop the skill set in order to do it and do it well.
Right. So Ashley, same question to you.
I don't think I can give you a finite answer. I feel like I've been influenced by so many people. Almost everyone I've come in contact with, I've learned something from, and particularly, I think I'm more inclined to say I've had 3 really influential mentors in my life that have taught me something that I've taken and used to be able to absorb things like you're talking about, stylistically, analyze, been taught to listen analytically, been taught, I mean, all sorts of things like that. So that's why I can't really pin it down to any one sort of, or even a couple of people. But definitely the mentors, you know, I've had a lot of people over the years, but there's three people in my life that I could say really, really taught me how to listen to music and how to analyze music and what to take away from it and how to use it as your tool set. Yeah.
Do you mind if I put in and ask Ashley? One of the things, I mean, I admire your work a lot, but I always listen to the Oscars and the arranging in the Oscars and the brass writing. The voicing of the brass in the Oscars is singularly wonderful. Do you credit somebody with that, or was that your early writing that you did with your band?
That was my 14-year-old band in Talent Quest. No, I think from an arranging point of view, I think that the influences were very much the jazz guys. My mother was a big band singer in the 30s and 40s, and so I grew up in a household listening to all the great big bands. So I think that was just part of it. I mean, before as I say, in high school, jazz rock to me was really on the outside. While guys were listening to, Deep Purple and, Led Zeppelin and things, I was listening to Blood, Sweat and Tears in Chicago and Weather Report and things.
Yeah.
So, I just had a different leaning, and a lot of that had come from listening to, I don't know, Ella Fitzgerald, Glenn Miller, Irving Berlin, Woody Herman, Basie.
Right.
And Luke, influences?
Yeah, I think for us, we're very much involved in the pop side of things, as well as the film TV. But for me personally, I'm very influenced by a lot of the pop artists that we have today, like Justin Bieber and some of the big producers like Louis Bell and Illmind on the hip hop side. So a lot of kind of the guys that are doing a lot of the pop stuff today have been super influential in my life. Trying to think of other artists. Justice is someone actually I grew up listening to, and Good Charlotte on the more like punk pop side of things. And also Ashley had a good point about mentors too. So many people that have helped us through the years, like you were mentioning at the beginning, Elizabeth, Robert Irving, and people like Ricky Minor and people like Mark Waters have been very influential in the way we arrange, the way we produce, the way we even mix. Very, very influential as far as the mentors we've had in our lives.
And Simon, anything to add?
Yeah, honestly, personally for me is this guy right here. For sure. I think, Luke and we met in 2013 at the CSU Summer Arts program, and we've been literally living together since then. Been through so much together, like so many shows, like traveling around the world, buying a house together. It's been one of the craziest rides, of our lives. But I know I look up to Luke a lot, and I think we complete each other in so many ways. That it's really nice, having someone like that you live with and is your partner, and pushes you and to become better, hear things in a new way. But I think outside of people internally, we work for a composer named Siddhartha Khosla on a show, This Is Us. So we've MD'd for him many times, and we did a show last year, Looking for Alaska, on Hulu. And orchestrating for him is probably one of the most educational moments of my career, just because the way he sees his musical intuition is so rooted in feeling and not chords or melody or harmony. And so much is very stream of consciousness stuff, and you get little glimpses into people. We study theory, we study harmony, we study all these things to transcend just building stuff on a surface level, right? And just seeing him kind of this little peek into his soul and how he builds things over emotion is just spectacular.
Cool.
I have to give the mentor shout out as well to Kevin Kiner and Neil Acree, because I got my first big break from Kevin, who hired me when I was still in college to orchestrate on Star Wars, which was the most terrifying job ever. I thought I was going to get fired every episode, but then also, and then sort of later on, Neil Acree, who I'd actually met when he guest lectured at Northridge, and has since become, you know, one of my closest friends, and you know, we became good friends, and then later on down the line, I started working for him, and then with him, and you know, with those two guys, probably, and not even as much as music, but just how I approach my career and my life and how I treat people is very much informed by how they treat others and how they interacted with me, and I'm grateful for that.
I think that's really. Can I just say something? I think what Nolan just said is really important, because there's so much more to making a career in this business than just doing the music. You and I have had this so many conversations so many times, Elizabeth. But your personality, the fact that somebody wants to hang out with you is equally as important when you're working on a project as how good you are musically. I mean, for a lot of people, that's a hard pill to swallow. But it really is important if you're going to be in this service industry of writing music for audiovisual. People want to like you. They're not going to hang out with you if they hate you. They're just not going to do it. There's too many other choices available to them.
Right, for sure. Okay, we're going to jump now from that kind of, what do I want to say, work ethic kind of things that we spoke about to some more business things. Nolan, I'll back up and start with you again. How do you balance your hard costs, your prep costs, and what you pay yourself? What about live versus samples and budgets? How does that all work for you?
So that's oh man, that is I literally have done a 3-hour class on this with my class, but,
No, I know.
but I'll try to compress it down. I'll try to compress it down a bit. Well, first of all, it very much depends on what I'm doing. An episode of television is going to be structured way different than doing a short film. You know, at the end of the day, you know, the first thing I look at is, you know, I'm for whatever I'm getting paid. You know, I have to look at, okay, am I keeping the lights on? Are my bills paid? Am I feeding myself? Because those are all very important things. And then, you know, once we've sort of fulfilled that bottom tier on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, then we move on to the next thing, which is how do I execute on this project? How do I make it really, really good? How do I make the people I'm working with happy? And, you know, to me, that means investing as much of the budget as I can into production, into getting players, into getting a good mix. You know, it's especially important because samples and access to software that allows everyone to utilize them is super widespread. Logic costs $200. GarageBand is free. Reaper is free. The barrier to entry is very low. So if you want to set yourself apart, particularly early on, I feel like it's very important to use live players. It doesn't mean go out and hire an orchestra. Like if you have like one singer or a violinist or anything, they will make whatever you're writing sound so much better. Samples are good, but I don't think they're ever going to be as good as live musicians. And then whatever else is after that, you know, I'll pay myself. But generally, you know, if I'm talking about a short film, I'll take whatever I can and invest it back into the production, because my philosophy is that we're judged by our worst work, and that sort of keeps me on top of making sure everything I do, I make sure I put as much as I can into making it good. Nothing wrong with samples if you don't have a huge budget. Absolutely nothing wrong, but do everything you can. If you're doing all samples, you know, hire an amazing engineer to mix it for you, or like take lessons in mixing or something, or really figure out how to make it sound good. Give yourself every opportunity you possibly can in order to make your stuff stand apart, in order to make the project you're working on really amazing.
Okay. Ashley, I bet I know how you're going to answer this, but surprise me.
No, I will surprise you, because I'm going to second everything that Nolan said first, and then I'll go into what you know I'm going to say. But the trick I mean, the Nolan touched on it, but there's a real trick that the human ear will perceive the performance. So if you put a performer, be it a guitar player or a violinist or a singer, something, it's really interesting that your ear travels to that. It focuses on that. I can't tell you why it does, but it does. So therefore, if you include, as Nolan's saying, one or two live musicians, that's what you're hearing, and all the other stuff that you do with your sense around it really just fills it out, and it gives this most amazing illusion that everything's real. It's an extraordinary effect, but Nolan's right on the money, and it really is worth finding whatever your soloist is, or two whatever instruments you can afford to get into that score. That will make your score sound like $1 million, and the rest of it can be samples. And as long as you know how to write, as long as you know how to orchestrate and balance them as they would appear in the real world, you'll get away with a lot. Now, Elizabeth knows where I'm going to go with this, because when I started, oh my God, 100 years ago, back in the 80s, when I first got a TV show and I was living back in Australia, my first TV series, everything was packages. Everything was packages, even back then. And I spoke to someone, a friend of mine, who was kind of a rival, who'd been doing it for a long time. He was about 15, 20 years older than me. He'd been the go-to guy for television. And I asked him, I said, how do you do this? How do you budget this? How do you break this up? He said, it's really easy. He said, you divide everything by 3. You put everything in thirds. He said, the first third is for you as a creative fee. You set that aside. You don't touch that. That's your creative fee. Regardless of what the budget is, you take a third of it, you put it aside. The next fee, the next third, is the middle third that actually is the orchestration, the copying, all the stuff that has to get it to the final third, which is the performance of that music. So the performance of the music is actually the musicians, the studio, the engineer, mixing, delivery. They're the 3 things. So now if you wear any of those other hats, like if you do your own orchestration, or you do your own copying, or you do your own playing, programming, whatever you do, you're entitled to take money out of that third for yourself, in addition to that first third that you set aside for the creative fee. He said, but if you do it this way, you'll never get into trouble, because if you run up against a deadline that you can't deliver, you have money to call people in to help you get the stuff copied, to help you write a couple of cues or whatever in that, orchestration phase, to perform for you, and he was right. And I've done it all my life like that, and I've never had a problem. So that's the simple formula. It's really simple. It's creative, the getting it ready for performance. So I guess whatever you want to call it, I mean, kind of think of it as music prep, I guess, if you want to.
Okay.
And then the actual delivery, the production of the music and delivery. They're the 3 phases. And that's it.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. Luke, or
Yeah,
you guys want to answer this together? It's cool.
Yeah, totally. I think both Nolan and Ashley are point on. That's exactly right. Everything they're saying. For us, we just actually scored this show Road Trip, and we got a decent budget, and we were able to spend a little bit of money here and there. But the problem we were running into wasn't the amount of money; it was the amount of time. So we're doing an episode every couple days, every 3 or 4 days, and it needs to be delivered and get to the editing bay immediately. And this is an episode is 30 minutes, 35 minutes, I think it was. So it's wall-to-wall music, 35 minutes in a few days. So it was like, well, can we even afford the time to be able to do this? Was the problem we were running into. But for us, the workaround was We have people around the studio, our team that play different instruments, play guitar, just something like Nolan was saying, just any live instrument that you can put on there, even if it's, a guitar or, even a live piano. You'd be surprised how much live piano can help on cues instead of a MIDI piano. But anything you can do live, vocals, is definitely going to help, especially when you're in a time crunch, just something to kind of give it a life. Because samples, it's very tough to get samples to sing. Like Nolan was saying too, it's, if you have a really good engineer or you're really good at mixing, you can make them sing a little more, but it's definitely a lot tougher. And especially when you're in a time crunch, you might actually save time by getting a singer to come in and sing on top, or a violinist come in and just play over the top of, the violin lines that you have going on. So, but yeah, as far as budget goes, I think Ashley has a great point as far as splitting up the budget in thirds. And if you have that amount of time to be able to go in and, do an orchestra and have copyists, and that's amazing. So yeah.
I think the only thing I'd want to add, just because I agree with what everyone said, and I don't want to say the exact same thing as y'all, is that I think my opinion on it is, I think it's just where I'm at in my career at this exact moment. But I think it's twofold. I think at the beginning, when you're starting out, it's yes to everything, no matter the budget, right? You don't know how your life or your career is going to unfold. You don't know who you're going to meet when you're starting out. You don't know who you're going to come into contact with, what new skill you're going to learn, what new piece of gear you might get out of it, or like a new instrument you might learn, because you don't know how your career is going to unfold yet, right? You're in the learning stages. And I think that worked for us for a very long time, just because, we did indie budgets, we did major label budgets, we did studio budgets, we did student films, it was all over the map. But I think there becomes a time where that does not become viable anymore. I think, and when you reach that crossroad, it's really knowing about like the value you bring to a project, right? Because yeah, I mean, like Nolan was saying, it's like, yeah, there's like samples and getting a live player in there, but like I would have a very, very, very hard time finding someone like better than Nolan at either synthestrating or composing or like, writing a piece of music. And Ashley as well. It's like one of the most incredible composers, arrangers that exist on this planet. You know what I mean? It's like we as musicians also have to assign value to ourselves and kind of insist on that in the industry sometimes, because there are always people who will be like, you know what, I know your budget's like 3,000 a song, or you do 16 grand an episode, but you're gonna do 6 on this one. And it's like, no, thank you. Like there becomes a time where you're like, I am not gonna let someone like step on my value or question my value as a person. It's like you're gonna do the best work you can always, but also it's like protecting yourself, because you don't ever want to question this. You know what I mean? You know what you're bringing to the project, and budget always has a very funny way of changing your perspective of your worth. So I think it's like obviously not a very concrete statement. You always have to do that, but it's definitely something to keep in mind when you start having your own voice and you realize you have these skills that no one else in the industry has, and you're your own person and you have these amazing, unique abilities like everyone does, right? It's knowing how to bring those forward and always making sure that your clients recognize that as well. Like they know what the value you're bringing to the project.
Cool. Okay, Clinton, you're on.
Yeah. So our next question kind of continues in this line of thinking about finances and things. So the question is, discuss typical fee structures, royalties, rights granted, work for hire issues, or anything to do with any of those subjects. And Nolan, of course, we'll start back with you.
Yeah, I'm always, I say these things, and then Ashley and Simon and Luke come in with these brilliant like thoughts. And
Nolan a chance to come back around and like be the last person.
We're not picking on you, Nolan, really.
Yeah, let me get the first and last word. I'm okay. Well, so so what Simon was saying about knowing your value ties directly into this, and also thank you for the kind words. You are both also amazing, and I literally don't know anyone who can do what you guys do. So I know their value, they know their value, and everyone they work with does as well. And so they're able to command a lot of respect for the work that they do. So typical feature. So I'll keep it relatively simple to my sort of sphere of things, which is mainly video games, television, and trailers. So rule number one: never give up your writer's share to your royalties ever. Don't. Just don't. That'll pay for your retirement. The only time you should ever split your writers is if you are actually co-writing with someone. If the producer comes along or the showrunner comes along and they're like, "Oh, we're going to need X amount of your writers," no, say no. You have a right to say no. Do not give that to anyone. It is yours. You wrote it. Keep it. And at the beginning, when you start seeing your ASCAP statements, when you're working in television and you realize how much this pays over time, you'll get it because it's quite a lot of money over a long. Yeah, we're getting some smiles because it pays for a lot of stuff. It pays for studio upgrades. If you're not working, it'll pay your bills. Don't give up your writer's share. And then maybe more applicable to those of us who are on our way out of college, if you're working for a composer, doing additional music or something, or you're ghostwriting, and let's say, for example, you're doing it on television, the absolute minimum you should be getting paid per minute is $200. That is the absolute minimum, and you should be getting at least half of the writer's share on what you write. And a lot of times when you're working for a composer, when you're doing additional on the television, the head writer will have 50% of the writer's share, and then whoever's ghostwriting will have the other 50%. Sometimes, rarely, it's more. Sometimes it's less. And if you're in a situation, sometimes there are political situations where they can't grant you writer's share because it might be a bad look to the producers. If they're bringing on additional help, your rate needs to go way up because you're losing out on a lot of money by losing that part of your writer's share. So if you're ever in that situation where there's really no way out, it's either give up the writers or lose the gig, raise your rate because you're going to need that money, and your skills are worth it. If they want to hire you in the first place, that's telling you that your skills are at the level to where you're valued. Let's see, video games, indie world probably goes up max to like 1,000 a minute. AAA land is anywhere from 1,200 to 2,800 per minute. That's relatively standard video game fees. And I'd say trailer music, trailer syncs, like big trailer syncs, or anywhere you should be seeing anywhere from 10 to 60,000 per placement. Is about right. Some are more, like if you get something placed on Avengers, congratulations on the new house. If it's something a lot smaller, you might see like 5 or 6 grand. But in trailer music, the trailer company will keep the production half of the royalties. You'll keep the writers, so you'll get writers' share in that too. And that's as far as my realm of experience goes, that's about correct as far as fees and structures and things like that go.
Great, concise answer. Ashley, anything to add?
Wow, I think Nolan's really given up all the secrets. And I think he's right. I mean, I got to support him 100% on the writer's share thing. I mean, even people I know who've been in the business, for 100 years and have done back-to-back movies, television, whatever, ultimately, if they're lucky in that lifespan, they might have 8 shows or 8 movies out of their entire career that are the big hits. And they're the ones that keep generating that revenue. Yes, you work on all the other ones all the way through your life and your career. But by the time you get to, retirement age, there's really only going to be a handful that are still generating that income, whether it's, around the world, in syndication, in, whatever. It's really interesting. Where I live in my neighborhood, there's a neighborhood magazine that comes out, and it came out last week. And Dean Kay is a neighbor of mine. He lives here, and they did a cover story. And Dean Kay, for those of you who don't know, he's on the board of ASCAP as a publisher. And he's also the fellow who wrote That's Life for Frank Sinatra. And he wrote it when he was 22 years old. He'd just come out of the army. And he was really depressed. And he sat at the piano and he wrote this thing, pouring his heart out, the lyrics of, That's Life, whatever.
That's what people say, right?
Yeah, I've been a puppet, a pauper, a pirate, whatever it is, a pawn and a king. He was, and this thing eventually found its way to Frank Sinatra, recorded it. He's lived off this song. It just got, in this article he talks about, it just got 3 placements in Joker. And he bought himself, on the strength of that, a brand new Corvette that he'd always wanted all his life. On a song he wrote 50 years ago. So that's why you don't give up your copyrights. That's the first lesson, right? But you know, the real thing is about value. Nobody's going to value you if you don't value yourself. You have to have a certain amount of self-respect. I think back to the days I did a lot of advertising in Australia. And I can't tell you the number of times that the first job I ever did for an agency was the biggest budget I ever got. After that, every job was a favor. We don't have a lot of money this time around. We don't have, and every time it went down by a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And I look back on 5, 6 years ago, and I go, you know, the first time I ever worked for you, you know, you had all this money, and now it's like I seem to only do favors. So, you know, you really do have to value yourself, and you never give up your writer's share. And if there's no money involved, then there's always ways to make something out of the job, whether it's by getting the publishing, by maybe having people buy you that have no money. You need a piece of equipment. You need a sample library or something to do this work that you can then use in other jobs. But always get something. Always get something. And please never take points in an independent film. It's like I can paper my house with the number of contracts I have points in an independent film. Now, if somebody offers you points in a Broadway show or an off-Broadway show that might go to Broadway, that's a different story, because on Broadway, it's not work for hire. You actually own your own stuff, and that's a big difference, and you have creative control. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for, you know, knowing what your value is and knowing how to negotiate terms with what's available to you. And it's not always financial. It's not always upfront money. So it's
I hope you're all taking notes. No, I am. Luke, Simon, anything to add? You guys kind of work in maybe a little bit of a different world from time to time.
Yeah, everything you guys are saying is absolutely great. And I think the value thing is huge. And like you're saying, Ashley, even in the time you guys are in now in college, you know, still having some sort of value, gain some sort of value out of something. If it's an internship, if you're writing for something, getting some sort of value, you can't be just taken advantage of. You know, we've all heard stories of, you know, the writer that got no credit on the song or the film, or, you know, we've all heard the stories, and it doesn't lead anywhere, you know, and you know, we've had those stories too ourselves. So I think value for sure is something. But kind of going off of that, we, you know, just to give a real life example from our end, we had a song in Good Morning America as the theme song for a while. And to put some basic numbers on it, the sync fee would be about 10K, right? And then you're making about, you know, per writer, and there was 5 writers on the song, you're making about 10K a writer just a year on the royalties. You have to give away your pub because it's ABC and Disney, so that's just going to happen no matter what. But yeah, the writers, I mean, that's just mailbox money, and that's huge. And kind of knowing the landscape of like, yeah, I'm probably gonna have to give away my publishing, but keeping that writing and making sure they submit Q sheet. That's another thing. A lot of directors, producers won't submit Q sheet, or they don't know what it is. If it's a newer producer or director, they, you know, you might need to teach them a little bit, but it's super important to be on their back. Have someone at your PRO, if it's ASCAP or BMI or CSAC, have someone at your PRO you can go to and talk to them and just pick their brain about stuff. I think that's very important. We've all had the experience of being at a PRO and not being able to get in contact with someone, and you have these questions that can't be answered and Q sheets that need to be submitted that you don't know if they're going through or not. So I think that's also another important thing, is having someone at a PRO. But yeah, I mean, as far as the financial aspect of it, the writing portion is going to pay for a lot of things, and it's very unexpected. You kind of get your check and you're like, oh wow, that was unexpected every quarter. So it's really nice.
Nice. I think the only thing I have to add, because I agree with everyone, I think we're all just an agreement about all this stuff is get an attorney. Just get an attorney.
Yeah.
You know, they will absolutely help you for sure. If it's different when you're being hired by another composer to, like, you know, if you're ghost composing or doing whatever, like that might keep you from getting those kinds of gigs. But, you know, even if it's an indie film and you're like, hey, I'm only getting 10 grand for this film. Can you work for 10%? I can't pay for your retainer, but would you mind paying for 10%? I'm really driven. I'm going there, but, you know, this is just right now. Can we build this relationship? You'd actually be kind of surprised how many would say yes, you know, but an attorney.
That's been so important for our growth as, you know, me and Simon. Having an attorney just helps take that weight off your shoulders, first of all. And a lot of these attorneys have relationships with people that are already at, you know, whether it's a record label or, you know, at Warner or at Universal, wherever, they have those relationships already. So they're able to negotiate in a different way. So yeah, once you hit that point where you have a project that has enough budget, hire an attorney and start to form a relationship with them, because they're going to save your ass many times.
And your relationship too, because it's hard when you're working with like a film director and you're like, sorry guys, my rate 50 grand. I'm not getting out of bed for anything less. I'm not taking points. Thanks for offering, but I'm not interested. Oh, but how was your weekend? This scene is really cool. I was thinking like a banjo in this scene. It's very uncomfortable. It's like have a gatekeeper, have somebody like, you know, to take those punches. So your creative relationship's not suffering.
One thing I'd add to that. Yes, to all that, and yes, an intermediary is really important. But particularly when you're starting out, if you can, find an attorney who'll not only work for you under those conditions, but will also explain to you what he's doing, or what he or she is doing as an attorney. So you're actually getting a lesson in what negotiation is and what rights are and how they, you know, I mean, I was so fortunate in the beginning to have a lawyer who would not let me sign anything. We went through every clause by clause by clause, and he would explain it to me. If I didn't get it, I'd sit there like I was in school until I got it. And now it's so easy for me to read a contract and just glance through it because of this lawyer who was prepared to make sure he didn't just say sign here, sign here, sign here. He took the time to teach me what everything meant. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So if you can find someone who can teach you that, it's money in the bank. It's really good.
Very good. Okay, we have one last question, and I'm going to go around the room the other way. We're just going to freshen this up. Nolan, you're off the hook, so we'll save the best for last now, right? Okay, so now I'm teasing. I'm an equal opportunity teaser. So Luke and Simon, you have the floor here. How has the pandemic affected you guys, or has it? And then what do you see as the future of your business? What advice? I mean, everybody's been giving fabulous advice, but is there anything else that you would tell the students who are still stuck with me and Clinton? What they need to look forward to? And what do you think about libraries?
That's
as always,
totally.
Multi-part question.
No, great question. I think, you know, it's obviously the pandemic has been hard on multiple levels and has been just an insane thing to deal with. But I think as musicians and as entrepreneurs, we need to find ways to make this situation benefit us in certain ways. And I think for us, the way we were able to kind of almost benefit from the pandemic was, you know, we were doing so many sessions pre-COVID with people coming to the studio, and you know, we were able to move a lot of stuff on Zoom, which has been kind of nice because you're able to do a session, you know, pretty quickly. You don't have to wait for the person; they're not going to show up late. So you know, it's been kind of nice as far as a time saver. And also, we've been able to work with artists from all over the world. You know, we worked with artists from Europe, from Asia, from New York, from, you know, Miami. So it's kind of been really cool working with that, and, you know, working out all the little kinks. You know, there's, you know, this plugin we use called Audio Movers that allows us to stream full quality audio to the artists that we're working with. So yeah, as far as working in the pandemic, I think it's really on us as creatives to figure out creative solutions to make sure our business is expanding and not, going the other direction. It's tough, and obviously we are all dealing with it all with the COVID stuff, and it's really hard. But luckily for us, we've been able to, I think, expand our business and keep on growing as producers, composers, and everything.
Yeah, I think to add on top of that for library stuff, we kind of accidentally just fell into it because we just have hundreds and hundreds of cues that we just own publishing on. And we've done a bunch of live virtual events that we are MDing. And we're about to close a couple brand deals with a couple companies, big sports companies, in which we're going to be the executive producers for their music. So we kind of have started a library, but also like if you're in control of your own library, then obviously it's a good thing. But if you're just going to put tracks into some like company, it's like it's not like a feasible long-term situation. But I think as far as long-term goes, NFTs are going to be the future. Non-fungible tokens, if everyone knows about, it's basically stock investing for artists, composers, musicians, things like that. You can invest in an artist by buying this token that there's only a finite number of, and that hopefully you buy a cue from Nolan, and I'd buy it because I know that there's only a finite amount of them, and in 20 years when he's like insanely huge or whatever, that I could cash that out and make money off of that. Also the artist does as well. But NFT is definitely something to look into. It's going to be around for a while, but basically stock investing for the artist.
Very cool idea. Ashley, what do you think?
I think that certain aspects of the industry will definitely change. I think composers are so used to being isolated and insular, it hasn't been that big a change for them. They've probably adapted more than most professions would. The notion of meetings over Zoom, to be honest with you, I can't remember the last time, pre-pandemic, I can't remember the last time I had an in-person meeting with a director for a job anyway. So I don't know that that's changed all that much. Certainly in a city like LA, the not having to travel from studio to studio and to has been a time saver. I think the musicians, it's a different story, and certainly the singers, it's a different story for them. It's been far more difficult for them to make a living. I think the people who've done these orchestras, I know a few composers have done these sort of orchestras with one player, one string player recording and another string player recording, and they've spent time with microphone placement on a TV series so that every week when they record, that player is in the same position. And I just can't imagine the engineer's job of having to get all, you got a 28-piece string section and you got 28 individual tracks and you got to try and blend them all together. I think I'd rather stick pins in my eyes than have to try and do that. But I mean, everybody's had to make accommodation to work, and I think there'll be certain things that come out the end of it that we'll just take for granted. I think what the guys just said about working internationally has been amazing. I've had the same experience. I've met people and worked with people that I would never have met or had the opportunity to work with because we were forced to do it this way. We either did it that way or we didn't do it at all. And, I think that's something now that everybody will have in the back of their mind, in their arsenal. It won't be as limited to, okay, who's available here? Well, I mean, one of the things that was really interesting was, using the time difference for getting things done. I know that, for example, if you needed something done on the other side of the world, I could go to bed and wake up the next morning and I had it back. So it was like working in a 24-hour cycle that we never had before. You know, you didn't even think of things like that. But for example, animation companies have been, and CGI companies have been using that for years. All the studios that do all the big CGI stuff, when you look at the end of the movie credits, you see that, you know, they're in Ireland, they're in Korea, they're in Australia, they're in wherever they are, and you work out they're all time zones, and they review this stuff throughout the day. And it also allows something, if some part of the world goes down, if the CGI plant in Korea gets wiped out in an earthquake, there's 4 other CGI plants working on the same movie that can pick up the slack. So there's a lot of things that have been going on in other aspects of our business that we are now just starting to come to us, and it's up to us now to incorporate them in a way that's creative for us and time saving for us.
Nolan, what do you think?
I think that everything that Simon and Luke and Ashley just said is, you know, super spot on, and
Yes.
incredibly relevant to what we're all going through right now. Well, I gotta say, like, first off, we are very lucky that the pandemic happened in the year that it did, and that almost everyone has internet access and access to a computer and Zoom. Because if this happened 20 years ago, I think the industry probably would have completely collapsed. So with as far as luck goes, I think we definitely. It's very good that it didn't happen 20 years ago, because then we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. But I got very, very lucky as far as the pandemic goes, because the majority of my work is in animated television, video games, and trailers, which are all things that the entire production team can do from home, and was already being done from home in many cases. So my day-to-day, besides, you know, wearing a mask when I go out and going out less often, and, you know, taking all the precautions that one does in the pandemic, my day-to-day really didn't change all that much. So it was really strange, because I was sort of just, you know, business as usual, and then, you know, a lot of my friends, whether they were performers or people who worked on live action television, just everything got turned upside down. So that, you know, for me, that was sort of there was a, hey, this is a sign, I should jump in and help my buddies right now, because they're probably trying to figure out how to get this stuff going. So I, you know, helped a lot of people sort of acclimate. A lot of musicians who are trying to switch over to doing lessons virtually, or learning how to record themselves. I was trying to set them up with recording equipment, give them, you know, lessons in Logic so they can get this stuff done. You know, what I think, as terrible as the pandemic has been in general, I do think it brought the music community a bit closer together. Because we're all, at the end of the day, we compete. Like, a lot of people are going after the same jobs, but we're all in this together at the end of the day. And you know, seeing that has made me has brought me a little bit of joy in the last 12 months. But what I see as the future of our business, I don't know. If I knew, I would be on top of the industry. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, which is just be nice to people and write as good as I can. And that's been working out well for me so far. As far as library music, okay, so just straight up, I'm biased because I'm the director of A&R for a music library, for a trailer library. And I think Simon and Luke had a really good point. So if you can control your own stuff, you know, and you can keep all the publisher, yeah, you're going to rake it in. But a big part of that is, and Simon and Luke can do this because they've done such an amazing job building their relationships in the industry. But if all the tracks in the world are completely useless if you don't have the connections to get them placed. The benefit of going with a bigger company is that you have a dedicated sales team. You have people with relationships with, you know, the people at Disney, at Warner Brothers, all these people, and they can get your tracks placed. I don't think it's wise to put all your eggs in one basket. I think most people that I know who make a living off of library music they average about 3 libraries that they write for. They have very, very good relationships with the libraries. Their music gets placed regularly. And that's what you should be, if you're thinking about going the library route, that's what you should be really thinking about, is like, do I enjoy working with these people? Are they getting me placements? You know, are they, when I give an inch, are they trying to take a mile? You know, it's the relationship is much more important than the actual library. There are a ton of libraries, write great stuff, find the people that you really connect with, and that are able to get you placements, and you'll be doing okay. I think that everyone, my opinion is that everyone, when you don't have a project going on, you should be writing library music. One, it makes you a better composer because you're constantly writing. Two, it gives you a chance to break out of your, if you write the same thing all the time and then you get a library comes along and they're like, we want like space funk. That's a good opportunity to learn how to write space funk without like derailing your career and making a client very angry, because if it doesn't work, the library will just say, yeah, it's great, but we're going to pass. So it's a good way to sort of branch out a little bit. And if you want to try new stuff, doing library music is a great way to do that. It's a great place to experiment rather than, you know, when you have 2 days left to dub on a film. So there are a lot of benefits to doing library music. It's not for everybody, but I think it's at least worth looking into. And that is my response.
Great. Well, we have a few minutes left before we open this up for questions. Anybody have any final comments? Simon, were you saying yes, no, maybe?
For the Q&A.
Q&A. How do we do that, Andrew and Jeff? Does Daniel run that?
Daniel's going to run that because he's
Daniel's the technical genius.
The technical genius. So we can just talk among ourselves here for a couple of minutes.
Yeah. Can I just add something about the lawyer thing, since I'm the lawyer in the house real quick? I'll be quick. I cannot stress enough how much I agree with everybody who said that you should get a lawyer, not to keep me or anybody else in business. But contracts are all about language, and very idiomatic language. And just simple phrases, and my students listening tonight will know that I could spend 20 minutes, you know, harping on one word, on whether it should be in a contract or not be in a contract. Even something as innocent sounding as work for hire. Yeah, I'm working, they're hiring me, great. But as we all know, it packs a lot of punch, those 3 words. So you got to get someone who can really look out for your interests and can understand these weird turns of phrases and notwithstandings and all this other junk. The other thing is, don't get any lawyer. You got to find a lawyer who's passionate about what you're doing, about the industry. You know, don't ask your Uncle Simon, who's like a PI, a personal injury lawyer, to look at a recording contract or a movie contract. Nothing wrong with doing that, right? I mean,
not you, Simon.
Congrats on the law degree, dude.
Hi, Uncle. Do I not know about this?
No, so, you know, I was going to say Sal, but Simon came out. So most entertainment lawyers that I know, including myself, have some kind of artistic background. So they know what you're thinking. They know what you're feeling. They know that you are, I'll say gullible, but, you know, you want your face on that album cover. You want your name on the credits of that blockbuster, but they also understand that, just take it easy, you know, so, but they are passionate. So find someone who's passionate, that understands the law and understands the nature of the art that you're working in. That's all I have to say.
And a special shout out to the birthday boy, Professor Izzo. Happy birthday.
Hey.
Happy birthday.
There you go.
Yeah, I want Stevie Wonder's happy birthday.
Okay, so Daniel, tell us how we do these questions. I'm new to your format.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel. I'm with CSUN MESA. I do have some questions from the chat. Let's see. So the first one, it seems like it had already been answered, but if we want to elaborate on it, more than welcome to do so. Ricky Corona asks, what types of things in the industry will change post-COVID, and what do you think will stay the same?
I would say a lot of things are going to change in the sense of just a lot more virtual. I think it does come down to that. I also do think to some extent we will go back to in person, but it will be less in person. That's why I think, like I was saying earlier, I think it is very important for us to kind of prepare our businesses for this sort of system of virtual continuation of what we do musically. Other aspects that'll change. I think a lot of stuff will go back to the way it was slowly. But I think a lot of the meetings and stuff will kind of stay virtual.
To sort of expand, yeah, I think I agree with Luke. I think that's for sure going to happen. I think already over the last few years, I've noticed that it's becoming less and less imperative for you to physically be in LA all of the time. I live in Orange County, and it is because I'm from here. I like being here, and I work with a ton of people in LA, and it is not, as far as I know, it has not negatively impacted my career. But there are a lot of composers in other places. Jason Graves, incredible game composer. I think lives in South Carolina or one of the Carolinas, and he's killing it. So I think it's becoming, it's already starting to become a little bit more common. But I think once people sort of have their network and are a little bit more solid as far as their work goes, I think it's going to be a lot less. I think you're going to see a lot less people, trying to move out to LA to sort of make it. In the music world, because so many people have become accustomed to doing things digitally. I don't think it's ever going to shift fully in that direction, but I think it's going to be more common.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I think things that will be affected, the most things that will be affected will not necessarily affect us. I think a lot of these jobs, I know a lot of companies, music production companies and things in New York in particular, are not taking their offices up again. They're not going back into Manhattan. They're not going to deal with the commute. There's going to be a lot of empty real estate. I don't know what that's going to do, but a lot of executives are just working from home. A lot of people are working from home. They're encouraging people to work from home. Maybe this will be something that changes the planet. I remember at one point when everybody was sending faxes and people were going berserk. We're cutting down the rainforest in Brazil, and the lungs of the world won't be able to breathe. And all of a sudden, faxes went away. And all of a sudden, we just started sending emails, and the world sorted itself out. Maybe if we're not driving cars all over the place, maybe the climate will get better or something. I think the things we're going to see may not necessarily be specific to what we do musically. I think it'll be a world thing that might change a little bit.
Can I just say one thing? There's something about the players in Los Angeles that are singular. I like the players in London. They're wonderful players everywhere, but the players in LA are singular because they play together with each other regularly. And I would love to see that come back where people can get together and play together rather than playing their line on something and having, audio movers send it someplace else and having people line it up and edit it all together. I think as a musician, you as a player, you grow by playing with people, not always just in a virtual circumstance. So I would like to see physical playing return.
I think the biggest fear, if that doesn't come back, is that the money people, the bean counters in the studios and such, will we live in this sort of with the threat of the great stages closing down, because if they don't have enough work to keep that space, that's a lot of space. And I think all of us, well, certainly Elizabeth and myself, over the years have seen studios close, have seen Paramount close, have seen Radford close and be turned into dubbing stages and turned into TV sets and such, simply because the real estate is too precious to be sitting empty. And once you lose the stages, you lose the technicians who know how to run the stages, and the whole thing changes. So hopefully, yes, I agree. Hopefully we get enough work back into the marketplace that we can keep those, the good studios that have the sound and the heritage, keep them open.
Daniel?
Awesome. So we have our next question from Igmar. He asks, in a market as saturated as media composition, what asset has treatment more valuable? Being a chameleon or having a unique artistic voice? If the answer is both, how do you find that balance?
Can I start with this one? Okay. So okay, I hate to be this guy, but when you're fresh out of college, nobody cares about your artistic voice. And I hate, and I see, yeah, everyone's laughing because they know it's true. Unless you're like Billie Eilish, unless you're like that, different from everyone and like that good, nobody cares. It's all about it's all about relationships, and it's going to take time to develop your musical voice. I didn't figure it out until I was like 25, like what my sound was, and that's when things really started taking off for me. But I would say if you're looking to if you want to go maybe a standard route, work in film and television, maybe be someone's assistant. My advice would be get really good at one thing. Be unquestionably the best person in your age group, in your peer group at that thing, and that will open a door for you. And I say this with bias because that's how it worked for me. And that when I was at CSUN, I did transcriptions, I did takedowns, and I was really good at that. And I have it sitting around here somewhere, but I did all of Michael Giacchino's Star Trek by ear. It's like 600 pages long, and I didn't know how to use a sequencer for the longest time, but I learned, and I was really good. I was good enough at orchestration and good enough at doing transcriptions that opened doors for me. Like I interned for Bear McCreary. I showed up to my interview with the book. I'm like, I don't know how to use Digital Performer, but I did this, and if I can do this, I can learn how to do anything else. And their reaction was like, oh, okay, cool, you're hired. And so have something that makes you special, not necessarily like, your writing skills, because when you're fresh out of college, no one's looking for a writer. Generally, people are looking for assistants or technicians or people to take on non-musical tasks so they can spend more time writing. So if you're looking to get in that way, that specific way, that's what I would recommend. And then, write on your own time, and you never know what opportunities will turn into writing opportunities. But if you're going for like a studio job or an assistant job or an internship, get really amazing at something. But when you're better at everyone else than one particular thing, people tend to want to keep you around for a while. And stability is a good way to sort of to cultivate options and branch out. That's my take.
Yep. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think adding on to what Nolan's saying too, the way Simon and I have really set ourselves up is, let's give ourselves the best chance. Let's give ourselves the best chance of going where we want to go. And also being versatile and being a chameleon in a way. Because, for us, there are times that film and TV is, popping off and we're doing a million projects. There's times where, we're doing a million songs. But, during the pandemic, I think what, took the biggest hit for us at first was, less film and TV, less sync stuff because a lot of production shut down. And so what happened is we just ended up going full flow into doing artist projects, doing songs. And I think, if we hadn't been as, versatile, if we hadn't been as much of a chameleon, we wouldn't be able to, sustain. So I think the pandemic has really showed a lot of people, it's like, you need to be versatile to a certain extent. With that being said, you do need to have your own voice. And I think that's what makes you unique as a composer. And I think you kind of go on a journey as a composer to find that. But like Nolan said too, being an assistant is huge. It's a great help. You're going to learn a ton. I've learned a ton from different mentors and people I assisted in the past, and just even being around, as an assistant, you might be sitting on the couch during a session and you're thinking, oh, why am I just sitting on this couch? Well, pay attention during that session, because there's little things, how the way the composer is interacting with the player, or the way the producer is interacting with the artist, the little things that really matter in the communication. Like Ashley was saying too, the relationships are huge, and really is a, over 50% part of our job is, the relationships and just hanging out with people. And I think a lot of that I learned as an assistant, just kind of analyzing and looking at how this producer is talking to this person, how they're talking to the director, or, just, it's huge to be able to just look at and analyze as an assistant, not only what you're doing for the composer or producer, but just what they're doing and what they're interacting.
Yeah, and I think just to mention about the assistant thing as well, it's huge, not only musically, but, and on the business sense too. Like I remember like the first like 2 or 3 shows I did with Ricky Minor, and I was taking notes in his meeting while he was negotiating a budget for a show. And I was like, that's something I will never forget. Like it's so like burned into my memory. Just seeing, you know, someone of that skill level and communication ability to kind of like traverse through these situations was so priceless. It's so priceless. And I think on the voice thing, I mean, I think just my personal experience, I mean, I was like a very high achiever in college, and I was like, oh, I have a voice. Oh, I have this like cool ability. I'm like the best. And I'm not speaking for everyone. I'm just speaking for myself. I was just like, I got it.
You
And
are
then
the best, though.
and then, oh, thanks, Nolan. But upon actually getting into the business, I was like, oh, okay. I don't have a voice. I need to learn from all this stuff first. There's these people who have all of these skills, these abilities, this level of musicianship that I thought I was like, oh yeah, I have like the best voice ever. And then, you know, you get into the music industry and you see that there's so many people that their talent and their ability and their dedication is immeasurable. And as like a 21-year-old graduating college, I'm like, okay, I need to reevaluate this. I need to learn from these people. I thought I had a voice. This is like a little baby infant voice. This is like a little baby cry. So it's like we gotta like, you know, we gotta learn. We got a lot to learn before we like bring value to the music community in a distinct way. And I think there's a difference between like, oh, my voice is like this and this and this, and then being like, oh, I need to speak from my heart place, right? Like how you execute that is different than being like, oh, I'm 30% Michael Giacchino and 25% James Horner, and like, you know what I mean? Like that's cool on paper, but like, you know, that's 0% you. Like, you know, what are you bringing? Like, what are you bringing out of yourself? What are you bringing out of the picture? What are you bringing out of this ad? Like, in a really unique and incredible way that is not only cool for yourself, but also it's like bringing up the value of the music community, right? Which is like the whole purpose. It's like we need to. I hope by the end of my career, I'm like, oh, I brought some sort of value or musicianship or something in some way to the music industry, you know, in just one unique way.
Great. Daniel, any other questions?
Yes, it looks like we have one more from Armand. It says, what is the best way to break into the music world?
Get a job doing something else first.
I'm gonna steal a quote from, I mentioned Jason Graves earlier, but he said something along these lines that I think is I don't think I can come up with something better. So he said something like, no one breaks into the industry, you sort of ooze in. It's not like you're not going to be like the Kool-Aid man busting through the wall and be like, my career has started, you know. It's gonna be like really
I love that.
it's gonna be a slow trickle of things that turns into a flood. You know, my first year, I had maybe like 3 orchestration projects. I had the Star Wars stuff with Kevin, and I had 1 or 2 other small things, and like I was making pizzas. You know, because that wasn't paying for my bills. But slowly there was more and more, and then I started picking up writing work, and then I started getting into my own projects. And through this whole time, you know, I was just being me. I was treating people the way I wanted to be treated. I made sure that all the work I did was quality. I wasn't half-assing anything. I wasn't phoning it in. And I think the most important thing is that I was being consistent. And those trickles, all those early relationships that I did a good job on, and then they recommended me to other people, and then those people recommended me to other people, and then boom, now my career's in a really, really great spot. I'm super happy every day with what I get to do, and I hope it continues this way. And I'm just, you know, continuing to do that will work for me. So that's sort of, as far as breaking in, I don't think anyone really breaks in. It's going to be a slow matriculation. And the key is to survive financially until it really starts working for you. That's the hard part.
Yeah, what Nolan said is exactly spot on. Couldn't have said it better myself. It's so important to think of it as, you know, it's going to be a slow burn. And like I said earlier, it's making your, you know, the best chance for yourself. And I think that is, you know, making sure you have a longevity, some sort of longevity in your career. And I think it is important also to plan for that, because, you know, if you were to jump to the top of the industry, immediately, you wouldn't know your ass from your hand. You know, there's so much you learn along this journey. Yeah, it's sometimes a pain in the ass doing little things and, you know, struggling for a bit, but you learn so much inside of that time. I'm so thankful for the journey we've had inside the little time, you know, we've been a part of the industry, just because we've learned so much. And, you know, I've personally seen people too that jump to the top of the industry, producers that got a cut with a big hip hop artist, and all of a sudden they're in publishing meetings and they're talking to labels and they don't know what to do. They don't have the relationship with the attorney yet. They don't have the relationship with, you know, an engineer yet. It's like so many times that we've had, you know, relationships, you know, with different composers or engineers even, that have really helped us with different gigs. And even our attorney now, just having that relationship, and it grows over time, and then you finally bring her on something and it makes sense. It's a journey, and I think it's something that you want to plan that way, and it's going to make you a lot happier instead of thinking of it as, you know, I'm going to go one day, something's going to happen, I'm going to break to the very top. It's like you probably won't be happy even if you did that. So I think it's good to plan for a long kind of slow burn, and you're going to learn a lot on the way.
And I think, you know, perhaps that's the wrong question. Like, how can I break in? I mean, because we know artists, we work with artists that sign like multi-million-dollar deals with majors, or like, you know, people who have done like multi-million-dollar films, like got music budgets, like huge music budgets. And from our experience in being in the music industry, it's hard breaking into it. It's harder to stay in it. It's harder to stay in it because, especially on the pop side, you know, you have a sound, you get known for a song, you sign a pub deal, or you get like a label deal, and you're like the next hot thing for a minute, right? And then, okay, the industry shifted. You know, now we were in hip hop trap, now we're in like Ukrainian banjo, like weird drum music, you know, and it's like that's not your thing. You're not known for that, right? So like, how do you pivot and stay in the business? So I think like the question, instead of being like, how do you break in to the music industry, should maybe be like, how do I create a sustainable lifestyle for myself in which I get to follow and do the things I love, right? Because sometimes it's going to be for a major label artist, sometimes it's going to be for your niece's best friend, so sometimes you're going to make like an independent student film, you know, other times you're going to be doing like major studio budget movies, you know. So instead of like breaking in, there's never a point where you're in, you know, and when you're in, it's like, how do you stay in? So like, I think instead the question should be like, how do I create like a really sustainable, long lasting career, like following what I love doing.
Sorry, I had to duck away to get my power supply because my computer was the battery was about to die. I want to borrow from my friend Diane Warren, who has like a dozen Oscar nominations. For whenever she's asked this question, how do you break into? It's 2 words: show up. Show up.
That's it.
Just be there. Just be everywhere you can. Meet everybody you can. That's how you get in. You make connections. It's all about connections. You know, I really hate to burst young people's bubbles, but you know, as the guys have already said, everybody can do the music. I hate to tell you, but there's a lot of people who can do the music, and a lot of times the people that you are looking to work for really don't know the difference. They don't know the difference between this music and that music. They just know there's something there. They like that a little bit more. They like, but they don't know why. And the next person may like the other thing. So you just got to have a lot of options. Just meet everybody you possibly can, and you know, be available. Be ready to, you know, if they want you, if you're fortunate enough to get a gig with a composer as an assistant or something, and they want you there at, you know, 9 to 5, arrive at 8 and leave at 6. Put in more hours, you know, really make yourself so indispensable that they can't imagine doing a project without you. It's not about being used, it's about being resourceful and being available. And I think that's really important stuff. And as far as, I didn't sort of answer anything about the voice thing, but when you get your voice, you get your opportunity to create your voice when you have no money. When there's no money for a project and you have to be resourceful and inventive, and you only have, enough money to get maybe 2 instruments or 3 instruments, and you really have to make a score out of a, it's like that show on the Food Network, Chopped, where they just give you a basket of things and you've got to make a meal. That's when you find your voice. You find it when you're least looking for it, because you have to force yourself into a confined vocabulary, and that's when you find your voice.
Well, I would like to personally, I want to speak for Professor Rusich, and I'll let him speak for himself. Also, I would like to personally thank our panel. You guys have been awesome, amazing, and everybody's pretty much agreed with everybody else and supported everybody else's ideas about what they've experienced in the industry. I personally will say I'm incredibly proud of Nolan, Simon, and Luke. They're my babies. You guys are fantastic, and you're knocking it out of the park. And I'm also proud of the work I was able to do with Ashley and SCL. I'm going to stop now. But I think everybody's got to be in this business for the long haul. It's like you can't. Music isn't what you do, it's who you are. You just continue to be a musician. You continue to meet musicians. You continue to write music. You continue to eat, breathe, sleep music. It's got to be, that's what an artist is. You have to continue to be who you are and put yourself into positions to be who you are. So thank you, all 4 of you. You guys have been great. Andrew and Jeff, this is an amazing venue that you guys have put together here for the students. Hopefully we distinguished ourselves, whatever we did here.
Perfect as always.
Yes.
Okay.
I like to add to this. I mean, we're so honored to have such a great program that Elizabeth has built up over the years. It's just fantastic. One of the best media composition programs in the world. And, what makes it so great is the relationships that she builds with legends like Ashley and others in the industry. But you're looking at, for these students, you're looking at 3 professionals that aren't that far out of school, and they're already knocking it out of the park, So I hope that the students who are watching this can see how that's doing. And Professor Rusich is fantastic professor. He's continuing on the great legacy of Professor Sellers, and I think the future is bright. But at least I hope you can see that you could be in this position. You just have to put in the time, and you have to show up.
You have to put in your 10,000 hours, is the same.
Yeah, if you go, you can get. If you don't show up,
I think Nolan, I think all of our panelists, hit the nail perfectly on the head. Is that, I wrote in the chat, there's no overnight sensations. There's no, oh my God, I'm a star suddenly. It is hard work. I mean, Elton John had a breakthrough at the Troubadour in 1970, but that didn't reflect his 20 years of playing crap gigs up until that point. So it is a gradual process, and the relationships, Professor Surmani and we drill this into your guys' heads all the time. You've got to meet people. You've got to show up, as Diane Warren said, one of our alumni, by the way. So you have to be there, and don't say no. Say yes. Unlike, former First Lady Bush, say yes to all. Somebody asks you for something, say yes. So just, you got to be, that's how you do it. And because if, my father, who was a self-made, businessman, very successful businessman, had one simple phrase: make yourself indispensable. You do that and you'll go places.
Right.
My father's phrase was, bite off more than you can chew and chew like buggery.
My father had a lot of phrases. I can't say them here because of the family.
My dad was stop playing piano and go clean your room, but I
Yeah.
guess, your mileage may vary.
It worked out.
Yeah, well, I'm a dad too, so I have a lot of phrases like that too. So.
My dad told me to stop analyzing music, but that was my thing, and I'm a problem solver. I like to figure out, how do these guys do this? Can I do it this way? What can I do to solve this musical problem? make myself a hero to whoever's hired me. That's fun for me. I'll do that till God says you're up.
And we'll close with the classic. When are you going to get a real job? Right.
So we should definitely say, I mean, like the professors at CSUN, especially Elizabeth and, Glenn, we haven't worked together yet, or Jeff, but Andy Surmani, the man who set up my first publishing company with me. It was like the coolest experience ever. In addition to somehow figuring out alternate realities, you're somehow both at the Soraya, one at night, one a day, somehow figured out time travel. But yeah, we're so eternally grateful for the CSUN program through and through that completely made all of this happen. So
it warms our heart when we see guys like you, alumni just make it big.
We're so proud of you. We're so proud.
We really are.
Yeah, for the students listening, all your teachers are the real deal. They're in the industry, they're working, they know what they're talking about. Write things down. I'm still finding stuff in my notes from CSUN that I'm like, I cannot believe I forgot this. That's still relevant to what I'm doing today. So yeah, pay attention.
Yeah, I want to congratulate the CSUN program. It always blows me away, the quality of the work that you guys do, and the students you turn out are unsurpassed. It really is a great program. So
cool, very good. All right, do we sign off, Daniel? How do we do this?
Well, that concludes our panel, and I will end the live right now. Thank you to everyone that came and stopped by, asked questions, and we hope you stick around for the next one on the live stream right
Thank
now.
you. Bye, everybody.
I'm gonna go celebrate my birthday now.
yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.